Want to thank candidate Rebecca Mills-Soyka for joining us in the last segment of the program. She, of course, running for re-election to the Twin Falls City Council, and I pointed out earlier, Neil Christensen joining us tomorrow. Neil is also a candidate. He's a challenger. He'll be in studio with us. Coming up on, well, we're less than 2 weeks away from Election Day now. 12 days? So that's coming up very quickly. And we probably will have on election night, we will have, some coverage. At least Benito and I will be trying to give some folks a rundown of some of the results as they come. In this day and age, when I first got into radio in the middle of the 1980s, you had to wait sometimes, especially in the rural counties where I was working, you had to wait sometimes hours because a guy would have to pull the tape from the machine and drive it over to Board of Elections. You hoped it made it there. And then those would get counted and added, and the more distant people were from the county seat, the more difficult that was. So we would be working election nights sometimes till 1 o'clock in the morning. And with the computerization of most of this over the last few years, some nights at 10 o'clock we're ready to put coverage to bed. Polls will close depending on the election, or at 7, 8, 9 o'clock, depending on the election you're involved with. And within an hour, you can have all of the details in, and then everyone just simply goes home. Or they go off to their victory parties, or they still have parties, and even if they don't have victory, I suppose. 9:25, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Hey, when was the last time you had a chance to ask a doctor or a medical professional for some friendly advice? We give you that opportunity every Wednesday morning between 8:30 and 9 o'clock right here at News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. It's called Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine. We were joined in studio yesterday by physician assistant Russell Singleton from Tripp Family Medicine, and we had a discussion on influenza. Flu season, it's now going to be in full swing, and his recommendations on vaccinations, and saying that for the most part, most people will be better off if you get a flu shot. We'll have another one of the medical professionals coming in with us next Wednesday on the program, and we would hope that you could tune in between 8:30 and 9 o'clock. We do this every Wednesday, and remember, Better Health with Tripp Family Medicine. And, of course, the office, located on Fillmore Street in Twin Falls, directly across from the main post office, and life's too short not to feel good. The Council on American Islamic Relations. Angry with Donald Trump. Well, who isn't at times? From time to time, everyone seems to have an issue with Trump. Washington Examiner, an advocacy organization for Muslims in the U.S., blasted Donald Trump for failing to defend religious freedom after the Republican frontrunner said Wednesday he would consider closing down, quote, extremist, unquote, mosques as president. And then Trump was asked during an interview on Fox Business whether he would enact as president the same anti-Islamic State initiatives launched by the British government, which include revoking passports of citizens who left Europe to fight alongside the Islamic State militants. All right, he would also close mosques that have extremist meetings or speakers. In other words, people who are calling for insurrection inside the mosques, he would close the mosques. Now, I don't have a problem if someone says, I'm going to go fight for the Islamic State revoking a passport. Come on. I mean, national survival is more important than making everybody feel good about themselves. And I may have a lot of libertarian views, but I'm going to tell you, preserving your country is still the most important part. Preserving your country and culture of what makes us American. Abraham Lincoln, I think perhaps the greatest president in the history of this country, suspended habeas corpus during the Civil War. So a lot of people got locked up on suspicion that they may have been a spy, but remember, we actually had one Confederate general who got into the outskirts of Washington during that war. The war was at Lincoln's doorstep. And so he ended up locking people away who had Southern ties or suspected of Southern ties, and they didn't get a hearing for the duration. Now, if you had an opportunity and someone had taken that to the Supreme Court, those people may have been released. But, of course, no one was in any hurry during the Civil War with a threat to the nation to actually do that. And in World War II, Franklin Roosevelt, the great hero of the American left, he actually ended up rounding up people of Japanese descent and putting them in internment camps. We look at that today and say, oh my gosh, how could he have done that? Well, Franklin Roosevelt, again, his duty to the American people at the time was national survival and cultural survival. We look at it in hindsight and say that's an overreaction. Well, I'll tell you what, the country is still here, isn't it? And when Donald Trump talks this way, Well, he's speaking what a lot of the American people actually believe. 928, you're up next, and you're on the air with Bill Colley on Top Story.
Hey, Bill. This thing about having compassion for these Muslims coming over here, I don't get this. I can have compassion, but let's leave them in their own country, maybe supply them with guns or something instead of bringing them over here to take us over.
Representative Steve King, Republican of Iowa, said the same thing. He said, train them and then give them the weapons to go back and then fight for the liberation of their countries.
They're not going to they're not going to join us here in our country. They're not going to do what we want, what our Constitution says.
No, well, the problem was if you bring that up and say this is the way to handle this, you get all of the screaming memes on the left wetting their pants and saying, oh, we can't do that. That would be mean-spirited.
I know it. We're bigots.
Well, you know what? If I'm giving them weapons and telling them to kill ISIS fighters, I think that that's very heroic. I think we should kill all of the ISIS fighters. Frankly, if you wipe them off the face of the planet would be a lot better place, and the future would be a lot better as well. 46, Bill Colley with you on Top Story on News Radio 1310 KLIX and newsradio1310.com. Thank you much for joining us this morning, I should point out, too. We've got plenty more ahead in just a few minutes. I do want to point out, if we get a chance, we've got some more details on the Obamacare system collapsing as we speak. We've been talking about that all week long.